Have you ever seen Spy Kids?
Sauce everywhere.
I know you have, come on. Spy Kids was shot, written, and directed by Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez belongs to a special group of individuals who have shot and directed a narrative feature film at the same time. Having done this on a short film, I am simply in awe of how much time and work that this takes to focus not only on the performances of the actors, but also on making sure you're shooting the film in a compelling way is, simply put, extremely difficult. But what is the most well-known instance of a director shooting their own film? It would be Ocean's 11. Shot and directed by Steven Soderbergh. Now, I've mentioned Soderbergh before in my video talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he turned Raiders black and white, removed all the sound, and put a different track of music over the entire film. But of course, I'm not going to be talking about that in today's video. I'm going to be talking about Ocean's 11, which Soderbergh shot and directed at the same time. But what does it really look like to shoot and direct? There's a reason that oftentimes 10% of a film's budget goes to the cinematographer. It is a ton of work and a ton of responsibility to make sure you are managing your grip and electric departments and camera departments to achieve and maintain a consistent look throughout the course of a film. It takes a lifetime to become a master at the craft. At the same time, directing also takes even more time and effort. It is really difficult to do either of those jobs on their own. But to do both at the same time, I would think there would have to be sacrifices made. But obviously a cinematographer isn't doing the job alone. Like any department, the DP has a whole crew behind them. They have their gaffer, key grip, first AC, the list goes on, all able to give their own opinions on specific shots. So, whenever a DP hits a roadblock, they have an entire crew behind them to help them get through it. And this goes for most of these examples of directors shooting their own films too. They all have a crew to fall back on the majority of the time. Obviously, there are examples where it is only the director making the film with a handful of other people, such as Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi, but those are anomalies. It is impossible to give 100% of oneself to both disciplines at the same time. So they must have crew that can make some of these decisions for them. Otherwise, the end result is inevitably going to be worse. So then why do some directors shoot their own film? There's this really interesting quote from American Cinematography where Soderbergh says, "At this point in my career, I have a really difficult time sitting through the first 4 films I made. I find them too controlled, too formal, too thought out. They don't have any energy to me. I think I was being too precious about the wrong stuff." And we'll get into that a little bit later, but there are a few other quotes that I want to bring up beforehand so that you have some idea of what I'm referencing here. Soderbergh also said, "I feel I've closed the gap between myself and what I want to accomplish to the greatest degree possible." And that's him referring to his own cinematography. He thinks he's hit a point in the craft of cinematography that he doesn't feel the need to go past. He thinks he's hit a point where he's good enough, where he can tell the stories he wants to tell visually, and he knows he's not going to reach a different level, but he's okay with that. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. The idea of being okay with not progressing anymore in a certain craft in order to open up parts of your brain to focus on other crafts, which in the world of this video, specifically a video about directors shooting their own films, I think that's really interesting because, like I said before, you cannot really give 100% of yourself to both crafts at the same time. So it would be naive to think that you could give 100% of yourself to both, when it's just simply not possible. So I think it's very wise that Soderbergh has thought this through and has simply given up the pursuit of becoming a better cinematographer in order to open up the rest of his mind to the directing portion of his job. Soderbergh also says the following about directors shooting their own films. "I don't think this should be a trend. I was trained as a still photographer. I've been shooting since I was 13, and I've worked with really terrific cinematographers whom I've bombarded with questions and watched very closely in order to learn the craft." So Soderbergh has not only been a top-tier director at this point in his career, but through that path has learned from some of the greatest cinematographers of all time. He's gotten a quote-unquote masterclass in the craft of cinematography, which cannot be said for the rest of us plebeians. I went to film school to learn how to become a cinematographer, but me going to film school for 3.5 years is not the same as Soderbergh directing huge budget feature films being shot by masters of cinematography and being able to access their minds and learn from them in the moment of actually shooting films for him. So I think that's really interesting. It is a very unique way to learn the craft of cinematography. It puts Soderbergh in a different realm than the rest of us people who make movies. There's one final quote that I want to bring up from this article with Soderbergh, where he says, "It's become a very organic process for me. It's really about creating the canvas piece by piece. And I'm willing to reconcile the fact that I'm not a world-class cinematographer for the momentum. Working this way is as close to writing with a camera as I can get, literally. I think now it would be difficult for me to insert another person into that process." And I think that quote really says it all about Soderbergh's takes on the process of cinematography. Like I said previously, he has no interest in becoming a world-class cinematographer, but what he is interested in is having a direct relationship between himself and what is actually being exposed on celluloid. It also brings up the point of camera operating and how that is a direct ballet between the operator and the talent. The person operating the camera has the most direct link with the talent. They are the ones capturing the performance. And when it comes down to it, the performance is everything. I am a cinematographer. As a cinematographer, I love the process of creating images. But I also know that the image that is being created and how quote unquote beautiful it is and can be is not the most important thing being captured on the day. The most important thing on set is that you capture the performance of the actor as best as possible in the best way possible. Because in the end, none of the lighting or camera choice or lens choice, none of it matters if the performances suck, or if you don't capture the performances in the best possible way. But you might say, there are directors who don't even look at a monitor while they're shooting. There are directors that will sit by the camera and watch a performance play out in real time. And that is a completely different way of making a movie. I don't think there's one right way to make a film. I think there are infinite ways to make a film, and they are all the right way, and none of them are the wrong way. Take Tarantino, for example. He rarely looks at a monitor. He's always shooting on film. He trusts his cinematographer to be capturing what they need to tell the story the best way possible, and then he focuses on making sure the actors give their best performance possible. And I think that's a great way to make a movie. But I also think that there's nothing quite like looking through an eyepiece of a film camera while you capture performance. It's a sort of magical thing.
And you know what else is sort of magical?
Sound design and music, which is the perfect opportunity to thank today's video sponsor, Audio. If you haven't heard of Audio, it is a one-stop shop for royalty-free music and sound effects at one of the best prices I've ever seen. Because beautiful images are just beautiful images without good sound and music. I don't remember who it was who said it, but sound is half the picture. And if you do anything related to film or video, you need a great source of good sound. There are thousands of tracks to choose from and really intuitive tools that make finding the perfect piece of music or sound effect for your project simple and effortless.
For example, Hans AI. Now frankly, I'm pretty on the fence about a lot of AI tools, but this one is pretty cool. Rather than replacing the artists with AI, Audio has made it easier for you to find the perfect track using this technology. You just describe what you want, and it gives it to you.
What's more is you can get 1 year of Audio Pro for 70% off just for being a viewer of this channel. Again, if you want 1 year of Audio Pro for 70% off, you can find that in the link in my description and use the code MAXWELLB at checkout. Thanks again so much to Audio for sponsoring this video. I think there is something to be said about being the one operating the camera in relation to the performances and actually watching the movie be recorded onto the piece of film on the day while it's happening, and being the direct link between what the camera captures and what the audience sees in the theater. But this brings up the question of, was Soderbergh the camera operator throughout most of Ocean's 11? That's a really interesting question that I do have the answer to, but I think it's fun to sort of dive into the IMDb crew list and try to deduce what was happening here. There's someone by the name of Duane Charles Manweiler, who is credited as both camera operator and Steadicam operator, and is the uncredited second unit director of photography. Now, they may just be credited as cam op because they were operating during the second unit photography, or they may have been operating for Soderbergh through the entire thing, or there's a world where they were the B camera operator, or there's a third option. Sometimes, so I've heard, I haven't ever actually worked on a movie of this scale, but a union will step in and say that a production needs to have a camera operator there every day. If there is not a union camera operator on set, you have to file an exemption or something. I've heard Deakins talk about this a few times because Deakins likes to operate his own camera, and on a few projects he was forced to actually pay an operator, and that operator would just sit in the back of set the entire day and never actually touch the camera. Except that I do have evidence that they did not do this. After finishing reading the article in the ASC magazine, I realized they explicitly state that Soderbergh served as his own A camera operator, while Duane served as the B camera operator. Okay, moving on to another point in this conversation about directors shooting their own films. There's an interesting anecdote from the making of Ocean's 11 where Soderbergh put a drawing of the server room scene upside down on his desk. Once he saw it upside down, he went to his production designer and asked if the room could be built with the lights on the floor rather than the ceiling. I find this to be a fascinating little detail that intersects the roles of the director, the production designer, and the cinematographer. How this scene turned out was they in fact did put the lights on the floor of this room. Now, what's so interesting about this is these lights need to be very carefully chosen by the cinematographer, the gaffer, and the production designer so that they have the correct color temperature, the correct intensity, and appear correctly on camera and aren't going to flicker. You can't just choose any old light fixture from Home Depot when you're doing film work. There have to be intentional choices being made. So what's interesting to me is now that we've removed the cinematographer from this equation, now it's Soderbergh, his gaffer, and the production designer having these conversations. I don't think that this necessarily means that this wouldn't happen in other cases. I think the more the merrier in terms of minds thinking through a specific scene that's being shot. But I do wonder if a cinematographer might have resisted this idea in any way. Because if you think about the way that light typically behaves in the natural world, the vast majority of it comes from above one's head. There are sort of pretty unnatural shadows that can be cast when light comes from below, which that can very easily be a creative choice being made by everyone involved with creating a film, but it hugely impacts the way that the image is going to be made if this decision is made without the cinematographer being involved, which sometimes happens. Sometimes a director goes to a production designer, has a bold decision to make, such as this, and then they roll with it and don't tell the DP until it's too late to make any changes. And I wonder if not having a cinematographer in the equation impacts how that decision gets made in any way. But in order for light to feel natural in a scene, it has to be motivated by something. Now, this motivation can be anything from the overhead lights in a room, or in this case, the underhead lights in a room, the sun, a practical lamp in the background, a window, whatever it may be, it just has to be intentionally motivated. But in this case, it's the floor of a server room. Is it realistic for the floor to be the source of light for this room? Absolutely not. There's no way that anyone would ever make this decision when building this room out. It would be more expensive and it wouldn't make any sense. But in the universe of this film, it does make sense. Because if it is in the movie, then it makes sense to be in the movie. So if you want realism, then you have to motivate your light with real sources. So for this scene, the light is motivated from a real source, being the floor of this room. Which again brings up, would this decision be made if Soderbergh wasn't shooting and directing? If he wasn't thinking simultaneously about the image as much as he was about the performance and the production design and everything else that goes into it? Perhaps it is a combination of these roles that results in a film like Ocean's 11. It is a film that in a way has a very specific look. It is a lot less polished than a lot of other films. And I don't mean to say polish as intentional. I think it is intentionally unpolished. sort of like how Soderbergh says earlier, where he has hit a point in his craft as a cinematographer that he does not feel the need to get better or improve in his craft. I mean polish as a less textural look. This film has a very high texture look. All of the sources feel extremely intentional, and it feels like a lot of scenes in this film are shot with nothing but what is there. For example, the opening scene where George Clooney's character is sitting as he's about to get out of prison, and there are those two fans in the background, and that is essentially the entire source of light for that scene. Soderbergh talks about how he doesn't use any other fixtures other than what is illuminating those fans in that scene. And that's such a unique look to that scene. It doesn't look polished. It doesn't look filmic or cinematic. It looks real. And that's really interesting for a film about robbing a casino, which transitions us directly into talking more about the lighting of this film. There's a great quote from gaffer James Planette, who gaffed this film, where he says, "The lighting was very reality-based. First, we looked at what the reality was, then we tried to make it work. We may have needed to enhance a few things for dramatic purposes or just to get an exposure, but we wanted the movie to look as if it wasn't lit at all." And this quote really says it all, in my opinion. It's exactly what I've been talking about here. Reality-based lighting, but with an elevated camera, is how I would describe the look of Ocean's 11, where it has this elegant, polished feeling without actually being polished, because it is gritty. It's a movie about crime. You know, they are robbing a casino. It needs a little bit of grit, but there's also this layer of elegance to it, where everyone's dressed in suits almost the entire time, because it's Vegas and everyone is on their best behavior visually while they're doing not so great things in the background. It's a sort of similar lack of polish to me that is very similar to a lot of other films of this era, the late 90s, early 2000s, such as Fight Club. If we look at Fight Club, it was released just 2 years before Ocean's 11, and it was directed by David Fincher and shot by Jeff Cronenworth. Not shot and directed by Fincher, of course. So what's the point? The point is that there's no one right or wrong way to make a movie. You can shoot a film and direct it at the same time, or you can hire a cinematographer, like most do. Some filmmakers will spend infinite time in pre-production planning out a film shot by shot, while others prefer to find things on the day while they're in the location with the actors and the lighting. Some filmmakers prefer to delegate the shooting of a film to a cinematographer, while others prefer to take that on their own. No two directors are the same. But what is the takeaway for up-and-comers like myself and probably yourself? I think it is to watch more films and really study and dive deep into how they are made. I think it is infinitely fascinating to watch a film and then deeply dive into how it was made, and then think about how that can impact your process. And I think one can learn a lot that way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.